Hands up, pretty boy.
Oh, these aren't homemade. They were made in a factory. A bomb factory. They're bombs.
Oh, man. That's a good one.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be talking with, as you guys can probably tell, Lucas Botkin of TRex Arms. But before we get to that, while you're here, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe because all of that is free and does help us out quite a bit. And of course, we're also live on Rumble if something funky should happen to the stream. But with all of that out of the way, how is your evening going tonight, Lucas?
It is going great. I had a lovely day at work. I will give a fast disclaimer that I had a considerable surgery 2 days ago in my tooth area. And so if I have a lisp or have any weird speaking impediments, it's because I'm coming off of that and it was no fun. So, but work must go on. I'm going to talk. I'm going to do stuff. So it'll be good. But yeah, great day so far. How about yourself?
It's going great. This is basically the only thing I had on the docket today. My wife, who's 40 weeks pregnant now, we had a doctor's appointment this morning, and that's about it. So we're excited for another one. And if I have to leave this stream early, it's because we got a new little addition to the family. So
that's awesome.
Hopefully not. So this conversation came about a couple weeks ago or so. I think we were chatting a little bit about some other stuff going on in the industry, and we thought it would be a funny idea to have you on to discuss some stuff because whatever people might say about you one way or the other, you have a lot of things to say regarding business, ethics, and all sorts of fun stuff in the YouTube / 2A space, let's say. Yeah, a lot of fun stuff there for sure. So I thought we could kind of start out with something fun that you posted the other day. And that was going to be on like shooting and training, because a lot of times we hear this from people that they don't have time to train. They don't have time to go out, or the must be nice crowd, basically people who look at somebody who has a private range like you do. And, they say, okay, well, Lucas can train. He can do all of his own things. So it's really easy for him, but it's really difficult for me. So I'll just read this post off for you. I know a lot of people complain about not having a range like this, but most people have a place to shoot like this within an hour of drive time. A friend's place, piece of land, public range, country, BLM land, etc. A lot of people have to travel up to an hour to shoot like this. I have a 40-minute drive to my range. Where there's a will, there's a way. And there was a pretty semi-vitriolic response to that.
There was, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have a specific question on that, or do you just want to dive into it?
It's an interesting topic because a lot of people don't want to put in the effort to actually go out and shoot, which is a common occurrence. We talk about gear all the time, but nobody actually goes out and shoots. It's about actually putting in the effort to get at what you want. Because I think you mentioned it somewhere else that if you're not putting in the actual effort, you're not really going to be much use to people. It's like, why are we doing this basically?
Yeah. So, so that post, I mean, this is something I've run into for ever since I didn't always have a range. Like I used to drive an hour to Eagle Eye Shooting Complex, which some of you guys watching this may know of. It's here in Middle Tennessee. Very nice range. You can go rent a bay and do whatever you want. I believe the rules are still basically that, and you can go do practical shooting, moving and shooting, and stuff like that. But I used to drive there an hour, a couple times a week to go and shoot when the company was starting to kind of like take shape. And that was a large time commitment to drive all the way out there and shoot. And I would be there like all day to justify that amount of time of going out there. But I was also doing that on weekends. It wasn't just during the work week, which is also an interesting cope people have. They're like, oh, well, you're just shooting in the week. Well, no, actually, if I want to get better at shooting, even now, like as someone who has attained a level of success, I have to go on Saturday. I have to go after work hours when everyone leaves the office and we're done with all of our scheduled meetings and go to the range at 6 p.m., which means I don't get home till 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and then I spend time with the wife. Like my schedule now is actually very similar to a lot of people in terms of the hours that I work, which is like a 9 to 5 plus weekends usually, and plus working in the evening. Like even this is technically work. Like this was on my calendar. This is what I'm doing for a couple hours. and then I'll hang out with the wife and do whatever else afterwards. But the thing that frustrates me about people who complain about, ranges or not understanding how ranges work is, like, where there's a will, there's a way. If somebody wants to get good at shooting, they will figure it out. They will find an IPSC club near them, USPSA or IDPA. They'll dry fire. They'll find videos on YouTube. Typically what happens, they find our channel or someone else's, they get interested, they get a gun, they do some dry fire, they learn what that is, and they're going to find a place to shoot. Like, odds are you have a friend who has property. It's not going to look fancy. Like, you're going to be in the woods. Like, a couple months ago, I went and shot with my church group. I had them come to my range, which obviously I have a range, but then I got invited to some rural property that one of the guys had. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll go out there. It's not going to be as nice as my range, but they want to do it at their farm property. Let's see what we can do. And we only had a few targets. It was kind of annoying. We were running uphill. It was kind of janky, but we got reps in, and I set up drills for them. We shot stuff. It was fun. It wasn't fancy, but I still got some benefit out of it, and they did too. And we had to drive like an hour out into the country to go and shoot. But that we decided to do on a Saturday together as a bunch of, young married, guys that just want to hang out and have fun. So, yeah, a lot of these people out there don't understand that you can find ranges more easily than a lot of people think. A lot of people, they watch, a Grand Thumb video or our videos or Colion Noir and that big tire like CQB thing that he shoots in. And like, yeah, there are some specific places like that don't exist everywhere. But if you want to go shoot bullets in dirt pits, like, those exist. Like, they are all over the country. You may have to drive. And if you have to make a commitment to drive, then like, save up ammo and plan for that. Like, if I knew I could only train once a month, like that, I would just change my schedule around that. I would have a plan. I'd have a lot of ammo. I would have specific things I would do, and I'd shoot once a month. That's what I would do. It'd be fine. I'd make it work.
Yeah. And I think
people just don't have that commitment to want to do that.
Yeah. It's the barrier to entry to shooting isn't that high, but it does involve a little bit of work. I remember I lived in Washington State for 27 years. Washington State has a lot of public land. So I would spend a couple hours before I found like the actual spots that would actually work for me. I would just be on Google Maps looking at BLM land, like scoping out distances and all that sort of stuff. And then I would set apart basically a day, and I would be going up and down trails in my old 1997 Ford. Well, yeah, basically I would take a scouting day in my old Ford Explorer, just driving it up and down hillsides in Washington State. And then eventually I found a place like, oh, this is sick. I can shoot whatever I want here. I can shoot pistols here. I can shoot 500 yards here. And then it took me a lot of time to do that. But I mean, I remember like literally in Google Maps, you can write down notes basically. And so I could be like spot 1, spot 2, spot 3, go all the way down the list, spend like 6 hours driving, but find a spot that I can use for the next couple of years. Now out here in South Dakota, where it's a little bit different, like I was telling you earlier, I have a short range that I can go that's an hour and a half away. And then also my longer range stuff out in the grasslands is 3 hours away. Now I do that once a week because this is technically my job. I do get paid to do this. It pays for all my ammo and all my other stuff that I do. So for me, it's easy enough to make an excuse for it or to get out there and do it. But even if I didn't have this once a month, I could still make that trip. And it's just you sink 12 hours of your day and you get it once a month, or in some cases, every other month, especially if we already have the skills and we're just trying to maintain. Because if you're trying to build up, there's no other way to build up skills other than getting reps. A lot of that can be done in dry fire, not everything, but a lot of that can be done for dry fire for free. You can get a lot of good mechanical skill for free. That's how I spent the first couple years shooting, was dry firing basically every day. And it was much cheaper when I didn't have as much money to actually have gear and ammo to actually go out and shoot.
Yeah. See, the reason I know all these people who cope and they say it must be nice, which that's got to be the biggest copium statement of the 21st century, is 8 years ago, we flew out, or 7 years ago, this guy from Japan, Liku. I'm sure many of you guys have seen the video. It's got like 12 million views. It's our most popular video. And the idea was this guy has zero access to live fire. Will never have access to live fire in Japan unless he joins the police. And even then he'll shoot like maybe twice a year, or in the military, which is like twice a year. But let's see how he can handle a live firearm because his airsoft stuff looks solid. And lo and behold, he was better than some of the people we had at the range who are red-blooded Americans who were shooting every week. So this Japanese guy, which you could be like, well, he's Japanese and Asians are smart and stuff. You could say that, which is
cheat code right there. Biological cheat code.
Exactly. You could say that. But he showed up. He was able to do this stuff, and it all comes down to, if you want it, you'll have it. Like, it is that simple. People hate to hear it. They say, no, you're just like, you have privileges because of how you were raised, or you live in Tennessee and I live in Chicago, or something. You can come up with any excuse for why you can't, like, oh, family, I can't do anything. Well, my argument for that is, if you have a family, like when I got married, a lot of things, I had to get a lot more serious about some stuff. As soon as you have a family, the importance of training actually goes up. Like, now you actually have more of a reason to train because you have something to protect, versus being a single guy who's like, you know, you don't have a whole lot of responsibility. You're probably not going to get mugged because you're a dude, and that's just not how it works. No, the second you get married and you have a family and you have kids, yeah, you actually need to be training. Like, now you have no excuse. And I think that excuse is pretty funny. People throw that out there like they have 20 kids. I've known people that have 20 kids. I've known the Duggars. Okay. Like, I know people with that amount of kids. So don't give me those stupid excuses. So,
absolutely. No, once you have more responsibility in your life, yeah, things get harder.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's there's like levels to it, right? You can be your own person. You should be training. You should be at a certain level, right? There's like that minimum acceptable level you should be at. You get a family, you know, that importance is going to go up higher. If you're really built into a community, well, now it's maybe a whole group of people that are depending on you and a few other dudes. So now you need to kind of build each other up. Now, speaking of that Lico video that you did, his mechanical skills were fantastic. Really, the only thing that he needed to work on was like the recoil control.
Yeah, the marksmanship.
Right? The weights were different, obviously, because he's using airsoft versus real guns. Even though a lot of modern airsoft guns can get pretty damn close in terms of feel and weight and stuff to real guns. But I mean, his mechanical still fantastic from essentially dry fire.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
and he
was squared away. He was good to go. Anyone, and so the series I'm working on right now, How to Shoot, which is a 10-part series, which it will be pretty long by the time it's done. The goal of the series is, I firmly believe, and that if you have a good series of videos and you have someone who wants it, they can go from knowing nothing about guns to being an A-class USPSA shooter, a very competent rifle shooter in 3 months. It does not take long. Now, it requires that the person wants it. It doesn't matter what material you give them, what instructor you put in front of them. Like, they have to want it. Like, that is the non-negotiable. But if they want it and they follow the series of videos that I'm producing, and I'm producing it in a format that I think will do this, I do believe that it will do this, they will be like a 70% of the way there by the end in like 3 months. Like, it does not take years of training and all these classes and alumni and level 1 this, level 2 this, level 3 this. Like, that's the biggest scam of the training industry. And years ago, when I started to like learn all that, I was disgusted, because I was like, I learned to shoot. Like, I took one class, which is a 5-day carbine, which I was already out shooting the instructor on a lot of at least the close range stuff. And I was like, I'm just doing this on my own. Like, I'm figuring this out. I don't need this official training for shooting. I'm just going to go off and do this on my own. And then I realized the training industry was it was bastardized and just horrible. And also, I would say, unethical in a lot of cases. So
there are a lot of parallels between like what we learned to do off of basically YouTube, because I've only ever taken one class. I've taken a handgun one with my father-in-law, basically for him, because it was free for me. So he bought me into the class. I was like, sure, I'll go shoot. And there were some stuff that I was like, oh, I don't actually practice this specific thing in a handgun very often. I should definitely do that. I'm not discounting training, but yeah, spending your first $600 on a class, not as worth it as like actually just getting out, getting reps, doing some dry fire, and like learning real basics, right? Because it's going to be a lot different if you're 1 out of 20 people in a classroom or 10 people, however big the class is. You're just not going to get the same experience if you actually just go out there and spend $600 worth of ammo.
Yep. And that's why the first episode of my series are table drills. Pick the gun up, get a side picture, get it comfortable, put it back down. It seems so basic and like dumb, but like, that's what people need to then be like, oh, I can comfortably pick this thing up. And then you go to live fire, and then you do dry fire, and then you start moving along. So
I mean, it's a lot of things, because even with like working out, if you've never touched a bar before in your life, if you start deadlifting, squatting, and bench pressing, if you actually like apply yourself and get the proper form within like 3 months, you're going to see your numbers explode. You're going to plateau really fast, but you're going to get that basic level really fast.
And that's the thing. People can hit that 70% because it's like it's just like working out or leveling up in a video game. The early levels are really fast. There's not a lot of XP you need to level up to level, 50 and I don't know, World of Warcraft or something. I'm making that up because I don't play that game. But after that, it's like, okay, I've really got to grind to get like a whole lot better. But most people don't need to be an 80, 90, or 100% shooter. You're not going to be. I'm definitely not that. We've got a guy in the company now who's winning matches, Brantley Merriam. I will never be as good at shooting a pistol as he is because of his focus. Like that's what he's doing. He's just so intently good at it. But I know, hey, I'm 80%, 90% there. I'm happy with that. Like for my job and what I'm doing as a educator and instructor, that is good enough for what I'm doing. But I also know most people aren't going to shoot to the level that I am shooting because they don't have as much reason to, and that's fine. However, I would argue that if you're someone who carries a handgun or you like to make arguments about the Second Amendment and what it's for, you need to be 60 or 70%. Like you need to be competent. You need to be pretty good. You need to be an asset. You don't have to be a GM. You don't have to be some insane, people think SEALs are good at shooting, but like some like really good, like SOCOM related, like competitor dude. Like, no, you just need to be competent. That's all. Like, and it's not hard.
Well, I mean, even like the military, it's not shooting. People might think of it like that, but there are so many other skills that you need to have to be an asset versus just like, can you put sight alignment on target, pull the trigger, right? Very basic stuff. GB Guns, however, disagrees with me at least. He says, I've got to disagree at Focus Trip. People need to know what to practice first. It doesn't have to be a 4-day course, but some essential training is needed first. Maybe we're saying the same thing, but I mean, if you watch a bunch of YouTube videos, like basic, there are a lot of good YouTube videos on like how to go from 0 to something. Now, I am not saying that training would not be good, especially for a new shooter, because like I said, my father-in-law took some training classes as a new shooter, and it absolutely helps him. However, I don't know if it's worth, like, especially if we're talking about like expensive classes, right? I think you can get more value from a dollar to performance perspective off of doing some more stuff on your own. And again, sometimes people don't apply themselves unless they're in a classroom setting. It's like I went to college. I could have learned everything, just about everything, for 1/100th the cost online versus going to college. But if I didn't go to college, I probably wouldn't have applied myself in the same way. So for some people, it might be beneficial depending on how they operate.
So I do that with working out. So now I could have done it a different way, but now it's just the way I've set up my life. I do it this way. I have a coach. I never think about what I'm doing. He shows up, tells me what to do. Lift this many times, push yourself to failure. I do it. I don't have to think about it. That is set up on purpose for that. Could I have learned like how to set up arms, legs, and watched videos and done all that? I could have. I chose not to. I decided to just go the coach route, and I could afford to do that. But ultimately, you can teach yourself how to shoot or lift weights or start a business. Like it all comes down to, do you want it? And it is tricky because we do get those people who write and say, where do I start? And sometimes that is actually very challenging. And this is one reason I took a couple of my guys to Games Workshop when I was in Phoenix this week, because they do such a good job of getting new people into Warhammer and into their brand, right? Like just from a marketing standpoint. And that's actually something that I think the gun industry does not do a good job of, including TRex Arms, of like creating that easy funnel of start here. Like click here if you are new. Here's handguns, rifles, how to hold them, how to like holster. Like that process is not very well defined in the gun industry. People will show up to our Instagram and it's like immediately like some high level shooting thing, or me talking about how ranges are plentiful within an hour from you. And they're like, I didn't even know this was a thing. And so
how do I block?
Right. So I think his point, GB Guns, I think he has a good point that the beginning has to be easy to find, which I would agree with, like some sort of start. And that's where those classes, they're like big, like handgun 1 or whatever. But I think there's a way to solve that. And I'm trying to do that with the series. There's other ways of doing it. I'm sure there's better ways. I just think people could save a crap load of money just going to the range on their own, buying a gun and watching 2 videos, provided they're good videos.
Right. Now, one thing that I will say about this class scenario, the class that I'm talking about was several $100s. A few people pointed out in the comments that there are like cheap classes that you could get to as like an intro. That's probably a better value than like, I think this class might have been like $450 or something for a pistol 1. So, and there was a lot of students there. So like, I was basically just doing my own thing there. But again, for a new shooter, they would get more of the focus for sure. Now, talking about this training, this is your new TRex Arms training channel. And am I correct about that?
That is correct. Brand new.
Where is it? I literally searched it on YouTube and it did not.
Search TRex Training, all in word, uppercase T-Rex. It'll take a few days to like populate.
There it is. All right.
Sure.
Just subscribe and pull that up.
New video drops tomorrow. Recoil management for rifle.
And all we got here is just shorts right now, sir.
Scroll. Click on the videos tab. There we go. Boom. We got 1 video. Yay. And the intro. So
why is your shorts the first thing people see? Unbelievable.
I need to fix that. I need to flip it. Yeah. So yeah.
So. Your new USPSA, well, just talented shooter in general, Brantley.
Yeah, he like wins everything. So
Pretty good shooter.
Yeah, and again, now he might be a little autistic because he was counting how many rounds he shot when he first started shooting. So there might be a little bit of that, but which I never did. So yeah, but he made GM in like I think it was like 6,000, like 8,000 rounds or something. Tons of dry fire, like insanely good carry optics shooter. Primarily focused on dry fire. Started with my videos, which was fun, although he outgrew them fairly quickly. But and then progressed. So like that's where I know like you can teach yourself how to shoot. He's never done formal training. I actually want to send him to some classes because you get a kick out of it, and I think he would be very frustrated. But yeah, it's frustrating for me. The frustration is seeing people online complain about what is not possible in their life when I know it is. And I know they would be happier, more fulfilled, have more purpose. They may feel like they're having fun just playing video games and like vegging out. But to people who are watching this, like I'm telling you, when you finish a full days of work or you've finished creating something or helping people or like doing something more purposeful, that is a much stronger dopamine hit than any sort of kill streak you can get in COD. And I've gotten kill streaks in COD. Like I know how to play COD. So like whenever I see people complaining, I'm like, oh, please, no, brother, please get out there and do stuff. You'll be so much happier. And I feel so bad for people. But
well, and this is something you've talked about as well is prioritization, right?
Yeah.
It's what's actually important to you. You know, if you spend like on your Instagram, it was like if you spend 5 hours a week like watching, football or whatever it happens to be, whatever sport, whatever video game it happens to be, that's time you could be doing something else. Or you can even be like a pro and like do 2 things at the same time and dry fire while you're watching stuff.
Yeah. Or what I do is I die in Battlefield 4, alt tab to email, send an email, alt tab back. it's great.
Do it all at the same time. Yeah. All right. That was a good lead in, actually. That was fun. I think I lost my notes here. Okay. Actually, yes, let's talk about this because I told you this earlier, is that I did not think that this was going to be particularly controversial, but apparently you are the most polarizing figure online. So,
yeah,
dealing with being controversial, I don't want to call you controversial. What I think a lot of people mean when somebody's controversial is like they tell you the truth without like pulling punches, or maybe you don't like their tone when they come across.
Right. Or their face. Don't like their
right. They could call you autistic. They could make fun of your legs. They could do all sorts of silly things.
Yep, all sorts of things.
Right. But usually when somebody says controversial, it's almost like they're dismissing your arguments entirely without addressing them, or they try and go like a separate route and like take something out of context, basically.
That happens a lot.
How is that for you, sir?
So starting off, it was very difficult when I started getting, I guess, well known, because I was one of the first people to utilize social media to its full potential back when Instagram would allow like content to get out. Or you could go viral. Like gun content could go viral on Instagram, like back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was also one of the first people, in my opinion, at least, some people I'm sure will dispute it, who presented shooting content on, like actually shooting on YouTube, like not just standing and talking for like an hour about a gun and shooting it from a bench or shooting a bunch of frying pans. Like, no, actually shooting the gun, like running and gunning with the stuff. And the reason I was producing that content is I wasn't seeing it from other folks, and that's what I wanted as a consumer. So we produced that content. And during this time, I was starting to learn about the industry and see how scummy a lot of it was, and learning like, oh, I can teach myself how to shoot. I don't need to go waste all this money. What are all these other people doing? They think taking classes is going to make them better, and it's not. So I started to speak up. I spoke up about the NRA, which people didn't like. I got a lot of flack for that early on. I said the NRA does not have our best interests at heart. I even went to the University of Wyoming, did an entire lecture about the NRA, going back to their early history. There was a dude that tried to actually launch a coup, like back in I want to say it was the 70s. He wanted like machine guns and stuff. He was a border patrol guy, and they nixed him. I think it was in the 80s, late 80s. So like, there's been infighting in the NRA for a long time. So I did this whole lecture on the NRA explaining that they're not our friend. They're not the 600-pound gorilla in the room, which is always the argument that was made. Mm-hmm. But during that time of me saying all these things, I was very young. I was 25, 24. I was young for my age. A lot of people were like, oh, he's cocky, pretentious. Who the heck does this kid think he is? He's not a cop. He's not military. Like, I don't fit a single stereotype. I'm skinny. I'm like, but at the time I had convictions that I believe were correct. I still hold them to this day. Lots of people hold them now. So I don't think it was complete, lunacy at the time. But throughout that process, it was hard. It was hard because to me, it made complete sense and other people just couldn't hear it from me. But then I would see another YouTuber or another person who was older or maybe different say the same thing, and everyone's like, yeah, brother, like, we amen, and I'm like, I've been saying the same thing for years. But I understand a lot of that is how it's said, the personality, my punchable face, I'm young, like, I get it. I know all that stuff and why people don't like me. But at the same time, I've also grown up being told, that I can't do certain things. Like, I was told my business wouldn't work. I was told I would never train military guys. I have. I've been told that I would never succeed at these different things. And I just used that to fuel doing all those things. So that's how I've coped with, maybe not cope's the right word, but how I've handled how much conflict I've gotten online from people who just can't stand my opinion. But I also understand it's the internet. Like, there's the silent majority who are watching, who follow, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that support our company monetarily. Mm-hmm. And I know, well, they like what we're doing. They like our opinions. When I say something, this is fun. When I say something that pisses off the lefties and the socialists, our sales go up. When we say things that people online want to boycott us for, we do better. When we take pro-life stances, we improve our sales. Like, people support conviction. So that's how I know, like, if the conviction is there for the right reasons and it's articulated from a position of, as much as possible, humility and with sound logic, then it's the right thing to do. And the saddest part for me is there's very few people who are willing to say what needs to be said. And I've said this before, like, if I'm the only guy who's going to say it, then so be it. I would rather there be other YouTubers. I'd rather there be other firearms instructors and other people all joining in and saying something similar. Not all the same, because I don't think we should all just have the same opinion. But like, all question the NRA, or all question training standards, all question, shill business practices or gun companies that suck or SIG doing weird stuff. Like, no, we should all be asking questions. And it sucks because sometimes I'm like, no, I feel like I'm the only guy saying something about, this thing. But if I believe it's the right thing to do, I'm not going to back down from it. And I never have, and I never will. So
100%. That's awesome, Jared.
That's how it is.
Back in those early days, you were probably the forefront of a lot of this, but as you said, there were absolutely people behind you that believed the same thing. They probably just weren't as public about it, or they just weren't, like, online. So like, it always takes that one person to stand up and start saying things before, and it sucks to be that person, right? Doing it alone, but you know that there are people behind you. You know that there are people that supported you throughout that. And as time goes on, you tend to be vindicated about some of these things, which is probably funny to see, calling out people a couple years ago, and then hey, like the NRA and different stuff,
or Leviathan,
Leviathan. I mean, lots of stuff changing in the gun industry, so all sorts of fun stuff there. But no, but personally, as somebody who was consuming a lot of this content back in the day, it was incredibly refreshing to actually see somebody saying these things, right? Because we all had the big three or the big four. Really never said anything controversial or called anyone out or talked about bad business practices or different things like that. And having somebody that's basically like the voice of this massively unseen group of people that actually has strong convictions. There's actually a film critic, RMB, Robert Meyer Burnett. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but his statement is authenticity is the currency of the future, right? So actually standing behind your beliefs, actually walking the walk, talking the talk, that sort of thing. You're going to get fans by doing that. And you're going to be supported by the right people, not just trying to extract as much money from the market as possible, which a lot of these companies, they're just trying to get as much money. You're just a dollar sign to them, basically.
They're just statistics. Yeah. No, if my strategy, and I remember a few years ago, it was back during Keanu Reeves was, it was in his heyday. He just did Cyberpunk. Everyone's like, Keanu, yeah, and he's an interesting person because he takes no positions on anything. He's super wholesome. Everyone likes him. And I remember looking at him and going, man, do I wish I was like him? And I sat there for a moment and I was like, no, because he's never taken a stance on anything. And as much as he's great as a wholesome dude, and I've learned some things from him, like, you don't just need wholesome people in society. Like, you need people to say the hard things. I mean, our founding fathers, I would say none of those dudes were just wholesome dudes just trying to all get along and like they'll be unified. Like, I mean, they wanted to be unified because they needed all 13 colonies in order to fight the most powerful military in the world and be able to create what is now America. They totally would not like what we have now, but yeah. But those guys like had some very hard conversations and they didn't all agree at the time. And they, like, if you go watch, I recommend anyone here in the chat or listening or watching this, go watch the first 3 episodes of the John Adams show on HBO. It very accurately depicts the early Continental Congresses and the debates that were happening between the founding fathers who did not agree with when they should separate from England. And they would call each other divisive, which I see in the chat here. They're like, oh, Lewis is divisive. Like,
right.
Hey, by the way, being divisive, not always a bad thing. Sometimes you have to. Like, that's just what has to happen. You have to mine for conflict. You've got to like get to the root of things.
Well, isn't it
you have to have that.
It's an Adams quote, isn't it? It's don't mistake dissent for disloyalty or something like that.
I think it's Adams. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an Adams quote actually. So it's funny that you say that because people calling people out for bad practices is like the foundation of the country. It's like
we got this country
together, right? It's like, well, no, I actually don't want to be with that person over there because I don't agree with what he's doing, and I'll give you here's X, Y, and Z why I don't like that, right? And you mentioned Warhammer. People talk about gatekeeping as if it's bad, but if you let subversive elements into your group or into your hobby or into the Second Amendment space, they start to take over and as almost like a cancer, take it over from the inside.
Yeah. No, and I've seen some of that. I'm not huge into I have a Acadian army I'll finish in like 10 years, but I know that the actual fanboys of that do not like what's going on. And I pay attention to some of that and culturally it's interesting. But yeah, there's a time and a place to gatekeep, and gatekeeping isn't really the right word. I'd say curating. There's a time and a place to curate your audience or your customer base or just the people that you're talking to. And there have been times that we have made statements as a company to do some of that because there are people I don't really want to supply equipment to. Like, not really. Like, they can go buy from someone else, right? That's fine. So we say some things here and there and just be like, hey, just so you all know, we don't agree with these ideologies. Don't buy from us. And sure enough, those people don't. Mission accomplished. That's great. They can go buy from someone else. They can go buy from the Socialist People's Republic of whatever. Like, yeah, go buy from them. The John Brown.
We don't have a furry edition chest rig.
Yeah, go buy from the furry people. Yeah, don't buy from us. Like, we don't want to. We don't want to serve your kind. Go over there. You want to do the furry stuff? Go over there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I actually think that is a healthy thing to do that brands should consider doing so that they don't fall apart, which is what we see happening with the video game industry, which is sad to at least those of us who grew up playing video games and like Command and Conquer and stuff like that. And all that stuff's dying now because everything is fake and gay and just destroying all this cool creative stuff.
It's every mainstream industry, isn't it? I mean, it started probably film after the Haze Code went away, and then we have like the comic industry started back in like the 90s. The film industry has always been terrible. I mean, all of the entertainment wing of American culture has, this sort of tendency to turn this way. And people talk about maybe the pendulum swinging the other way, and that is a very, very difficult thing to actually sway. So.
It is starting though with video games, and I'm really happy about it. I've been following it very closely, and AAA studios are getting crushed right now, and I love it.
Concord had like 40, 50 players, $2 billion.
It was biblical. It was biblical.
It was amazing. And I think it ended up as just a tax write-off for those guys. But I mean, that was 8 years of development down the drain for that.
I actually feel bad. Well, I don't know if I should say feel bad for the developers, but looking at a game like that, which granted, some of those guys are only on it for like 3 years. They go to another project or whatever. But man, if you worked on a game for 8 years and then it gets shut down with it, I can't only imagine. I've been doing this for 10 years now. Imagine, I'm just trying to think of building T-Rex for 8 years, never showing it to anyone, releasing it, and then immediately shutting the door. Oh, that would suck. I'd probably jump out this window right here.
After spending $200 million on it. But I mean, that's a weird one because you got studio interference. I mean, imagine being the guy who came up with the idea and then seeing it like contorted in front of you during the development cycle.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Nightmare. But before we move on to our next topic, we actually do have some super chat questions. So we'll go ahead and run through these real fast before we get to 2A space business stuff, which will be fun. Tech Guns for 199 says, I'm sure chat will be completely civilized tonight. It always is. But that's the thing. I don't care if it's uncivilized. You guys can be as mean as you want. I would prefer funny. One way or the other, try and be funny. Because those are my favorite mean comments is when they're funny.
Well, yeah, being mean is sometimes funny.
Be mean, but just don't be generic, right? Don't be boring. Be funny.
Yeah.
Julian, member for 13 months, says, bullshit. His arms are proportional. Which one? You talking about Lucas?
Yeah, probably be.
His arms look fine. Gabriel Baker for 499 says, I've never heard Lucas speak this slowly. Proof he speeds up his videos.
I've been speaking slowly. I had a meeting today and I spoke so slowly to get my point across.
It's like Lucas on downers.
Yeah. Well, I'm drinking these. These have, okay, you have to be careful. Fair warning for the chat. These vitamin energy waters, they always sell out because they're energy, have 60 milligrams of caffeine, and you have to be careful because like I started shotgunning these after having a rain and then realized, I'm getting 60 grams every time, but I'm drinking these because I can't have carbonated drinks for a week, so I'm just doing like 5 of these in a day. So I'm trying to keep up my 300 milligrams, so I'm good to go.
I've graduated to 600, which is like a can plus a pre-workout. That's where I'm at.
I stop at 6.
It's not healthy. Yeah. Andrew Vashon for a whopping $49.99. Thank you very much, sir. Says the thing is, most people don't want to actually train. It's almost painful shooting with some of my friends. They are still in the shoot a mag, stupid quick, hit nothing, dang bro, that gun's awesome, and then repeat phase. They refuse to be serious. It is difficult, man. And I shot by myself for 6-7 years. It's only in the last few months that I've actually found a group that was more serious. So it is difficult to find a group. Now, blame myself for this. I was not proactive in searching for groups or friends that wanted to be serious, right? I probably could have plugged into a group sooner and faster and been much better than I am now if I had actually applied myself earlier on. So to a lot of you guys that are having problems finding groups, people, friends that are more serious, like maybe reach out to some Facebook groups, maybe try and show up to some local matches, get on Practice Score and see what's close to you. And you can find, like I know every week in Sioux Falls, which is 45 minutes away, there is a USPSA match. Every week. I could go to it. I haven't because I work on the day that the match happens, but that's an excuse. I could get my schedule switched around if I really wanted to. And I could definitely plug into people who are actually active shooters, not in the bad sense, but actually go out there and train. But again, it's just applying yourself. Takes work. Drifted Cowboy for 5. Thank you, sir. He says, would be neat if you offered some sort of not 5K per day meetup in SD somewhere. I am in North Dakota and would drive down to learn about things. I am in the grasslands every Thursday. Come out. I'll be there. I don't care.
Don't get Chris Kyle.
It's a public area.
Don't get Chris Kyle. Yeah.
No, I mean, I had people ask me to do things with them, like,
Yeah.
"Oh, can I pay you to do things?" And I'm like, I'm not a trainer. That's not what I do whatsoever. If you just want to come out and hang out while I'm doing stuff and do stuff with me, that's fine. I don't mind.
I will say, if you don't mind, on the group thing. So I used to train with groups, and that sounds used to train with groups. You can take that any way you want. It is very rarely very productive. The reason people do it is it's fun, or they think they can get something from other people. But what often happens is if you're there, like the guy who commented earlier, like to be serious, and you're upset that everyone else isn't, you're gonna have to train on your own. Or you're gonna have to find a group where you're not the best person. The second you're the best person in the group, it sucks because you're there trying to get better. They're goofing off or trying to film for Instagram, which is what I was running into when I was trying to get better. And I just started shooting on my own. Just shoot on your own. Like, I know it's not as fun. You can listen to music, although that can cause some issues with learning. But training with groups is rarely productive. Like, even Brantley, like, I have access to the 4th best pistol shooter in the country. Like, at work, I could go shoot with him on Thursday nights, or whenever he goes and shoots after work. I have never gone with him, and he's worked. I think he's been at work now for 5 or 6 months, and I haven't gone to shoot with him because as productive as that would be to shoot with him, as good as he is, I know I'll have more productivity shooting on my own because I already know what I need to do. So
I wonder if that's a you thing, though. I wonder if that's more of like your personality, and you're like you're obviously very driven.
It can be.
So
I'm introverted too. I don't like people.
Yeah. Like, I'm not particularly extroverted either, but at least for me, again, I only have experience in shooting with one group. It is a pretty serious group. So for me, it plugged in great. For you, though, again, it might be a whole nother mess to navigate if you have people that aren't serious.
It can be.
Yeah. But again, if you want to, you have to try somehow. So
yeah. Try both.
Andrew Vashon for $199 says a NSSF first shots class is like $30. Well, that's very cheap. So that's your entry there is very low. Brian Isaacs for $5 says, please have him address the jab at PSR and Dirty Civilian over their video styles. What is your response to that, sir?
If people do gay stuff, I'm going to say it's gay. And you can say it's not gay, defend it, say it's not gay at all, to shove a suppressor up someone's rear end. You can have that opinion. I'm still going to say it's gay, and putting sex toys on guns, it's gay. Just seems a little gay to me, a little sexualized. You can debate that somehow. I would love to hear argue it for how it's not gay or sexualized. I wouldn't say it's a jab. That's an observation. But if you want to take it as a jab, it's a jab. Fine. I don't care. So it's an observation.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll talk about a little later. But yeah, you pointing it out isn't really the problem. I think people, well, I don't know if I want to say that they feel convicted about it, but
there's a little bit of that.
There's a little bit of that. But I mean, if you call the kettle black, like, don't be upset, right? Because if Lucas is like, I don't like degenerate content, that seems like degenerate content, or is objectively degenerate content. I don't like that.
People don't like that I say it, though. And I get this. I have had people say before, and I've had messages saying, hey, you're not wrong with what you're saying, but you're too big to say it. And I'm like, wait, so just because I can make a splash and make a difference, I'm not allowed to hold this conviction, even though you're saying it's correct. Like, you're saying it's fundamentally logically right, but because my platform is too big and it'll cause too much damage or whatever, it'll cause too much dissent between people, that I'm not allowed to voice my opinion. Like, I've had people try to censor me simply because I'm too big, which I'm like, no, that's retarded.
That sounds like the opposite thing. You can make it if they believe in what you're saying, and you have some sort of effect that you can make on the industry. You almost, like, I would argue, you have a
duty potentially.
Yeah, exactly. That's weird, because that makes me question whoever said that. I don't need to know who, but that's just
YouTubers, sadly. So yeah.
Well, I mean, that kind of we can get into that later. Noob Actual $4.99 says, I really think the PSR probably was overblown. The only constructive criticisms I have is I'd rather you call everyone out or nobody. Much love. Well, I'll handle this real fast. This is something I run into, is that people don't like when I call out someone specifically and then not someone else. It's just because I haven't gotten to them yet, right? Or I don't know
Right.
anything about it, right? If it's not,
Right.
if like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, if shotguns aren't my deal and somebody's making a really crappy shotgun or something, I'm probably never going to touch the thing, right? So for me
And then
anyways,
you don't know about this person way over here. Exactly.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
can't know everything. I'm focused on, like everybody knows who watches my channel, I'm focused on a couple of different things, and that's kind of what I hammer home. And I don't know, I imagine you have less free time than I do to research other people's problems.
I'll tell you right now whose gun channels I've watched. I've watched 2 videos of yours. I watch Brass Facts occasionally, Hop, because he's interesting, Ben Stager pretty regularly. That's about it. My marketing director watches stuff. I watch social media. I know what's happening. I also get a lot of intel through the phone, texts and stuff.
No, I have a question.
I don't watch content.
Which 2 videos of mine did you watch?
Well,
I feel like
the
you could get
first one you did on your truck, and I scrolled way down there. Yeah,
right.
I did my background checks. Yeah, and then one of the more popular videos.
Oh, dude, don't look at
rifle
the most
thing,
popular.
yeah.
It's horrible video.
But I noticed, but I knew, I immediately saw a clear distinction in your content more recently. And I could tell, he's got his brand figured out. He's got what he's trying to do with his YouTube. This is the stuff. I'm not going to judge off of this. Like, my old content is cringe as all get out. Like, the stuff in the last couple of years is pretty solid, but like, man, my old stuff's.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why people
didn't like me.
I
don't have to defend my old content. It's garbage. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was basically vlogging what I was doing that week in guns with no experience. So yeah, my old content. Yeah. Awkward. I try to forget about it, but I leave it up. So I don't want to be like, oh, I'm hiding from it. Right. It's like, you can see I was cringe and I got better. So other people have a chance to improve as well. When Dussy Dynamics for $5 says, Lucas, you never explained why DD's sudden Christian shift after Rod Reason's CEO appointment doesn't strike you as a grift. Why should we believe it isn't?
So I think for those of you that don't know, Daniel Defense, I think it was last year, appointed a new CEO. So Marty Daniels, the founder, the CEO, brought in a new guy, Rod Reason, to take over, who's from the healthcare industry, which I had some concerns about. But I went down there to investigate. So I was like, I'm going to go sit down with this guy in person and talk to him. And I had the same concern, because the second people tell me, I don't want to say religious stuff, but because I've had that happen before. I go to a meeting, I'm in an interview, and they start to give me like, I was led by the Spirit, this, that, the other. And I do kind of switch on okay, are they trying to play me because they know I have a Christian background and I am a Christian?
Take advantage of your beliefs, basically.
Right. So, and we talked about this because I went down there with my marketing director and our head CX guy, and we were watching for this. But the thing we noticed is he said all the same stuff that he said at SHOT Show in January, and then he told us in, I think, May, was all the same stuff. And he would say it regardless of what staff was in the room. So it wasn't like a secret thing he would tell us when his staff wasn't there. Like, he was saying it to everyone. Like, he didn't care who was around, which that's cool. Like, that's great. But I still was kind of like, okay, you're telling us all this. How are you going to live it out as a company or publicly externally? And I'm still watching to see how that works. They did put out their new Honor God, Defend Liberty statement, I think a month or two ago. So they did say, we're doing that. You know, they told us in June, I think they're rolling that out, and it looks like they did that. I can't remember how they did it, but I remember seeing it go public. And I was like, that's cool. They said they were going to do it. They did it. I'm happy. Like, they're companies that keep promises. I like that a lot. But the Christian thing, it's tough because we saw this with the whole Christ is King movement like a month ago. Mm-hmm. I think there were a lot of people back when that was popular for a very controversial reason, throwing that out there to get brownie points with people. And it wasn't necessarily out of conviction, but you never know. You never know the heart of someone with something like that. So you can't know. Like, I can't know if they're playing me or not. I just have to go off of like either my gut, benefit of a doubt, or look at their track record and then act accordingly.
Yeah. And that's a big one. That's why a lot of the times you see like a really sudden shift for some reason. You're like, wait a sec, what happened here? Yeah. Right. And Banana Watch for $1.99 said, dude brought up the Haze Code. He's a noticer. Well, first off, you spelled the Haze Code wrong. That's how much I'm used.
I want to say it's got an E in there.
It does, yeah, it has an E. Came out. So you should look it up, guys, if you're not familiar with the Haze Code, and look up why it got taken off. Just for no reason whatsoever. Nick for $10 says, I work a blue collar job full-time and overtime. You're a machinist. If you're not familiar with Nick, Nick is actually a CNC guy. And I'm a college student, and I managed to find time to shoot 200 to 300 rounds of 9mm and 5.56 weekly. My question is a CAC SR15 worth it versus a BM or WE? I don't ever think a CAC is worth it. They're nice rifles. I'm probably actually going to be reviewing one very shortly, but I mean, man, $3,000 for a rifle, it's got to be pretty freaking good. So that's my opinion on
it. They're good, but yeah, get the BCM. You'll save money and train. Don't. I mean,
that's.
Let me put it this way: I have a very nice Knights Armament rifle with the can that's you can't buy. That's like $15,000. Someone's trying to sell one for. I shoot the BCM. That's what I shoot when I go to the range. I like the BCM. It works. Just get a BCM. Save your money.
Lemo for $5 says, focus, fellow East River here. Is it legal to set up targets in the grasslands? I was told you cannot shoot out there. You can shoot out there, but not set up targets. I have talked to police officers out there that have just come by doing different stuff. Nobody has ever given me an issue or a problem. So as far as I'm aware, I'm good to go. Banana Watch for another $4.99 says the Haze Code correctly. It says, if you know the Haze Code, you are a noticer. Weird that the greatest ally never supplies troops to our war effort. Keep asking the questions. You said it, not me, sir. I'll wait for Lucas to come back to talk about this one because I actually don't see it on there either. I did pull that up. GL Dude 14 for $4.99 says, would you rather solely use Chinese tourniquets for the rest of your life or use an Olight brand pager for work 5 days a week for 40 years? That's a good one. I think we'll have to wait for Lucas to come back for some of these, for these last three. But then we're going to move on to, for all 550 of you people here, we're going to move on to business ethics, money versus ethics, which is the topic of conversation. It's just taken us an hour to get here, which is fine. I hear movement off screen. I think Lucas is helping out his significant other. So, hey, he's back, sir. You didn't miss anything. Actually, I just noticed Preston says this for $2. Have you seen DD removed Honor God on the website? I went and checked in their value section, and I actually don't see it either. So did that come off the website? Or
all right, everyone's boycott him. I don't know. That's actually
right. No, I'm just curious because I just didn't see it on there. So
interesting.
Yeah, I don't see it on there. No, not sure. GL Dude for $4.99 says, would you rather solely use Chinese tourniquets for the rest of your life or use an Olight brand pager for work 5 days a week for 40 years? I would not use a Chinese tourniquet. I think that's my... So what, do I die in a fire or do I die bleeding out? Or does somebody else die bleeding out? Right, when I try to use
someone else, which would be worse. Then you have to deal with that and get therapy.
So I have to take the Olight pager, you know? I have to take the Olight pager. Nick for $5 said, did the one guy from Dirty Civilian work for TRex at one point? He was in the Arrow M5 video and a few others in the background. I don't know anything about that.
The answer is yes. And for many legal reasons, I do not talk about former employees. I actually highly recommend, if you're a business owner and you're in social media, you just can't. It's not worth it. You never can, unless you have glowing things to say, like some businesses do. It's just not worth it. For legal reasons, you can't talk about past employment of people. So yes, that person did work at TRex. They no longer do, and that's all I'm going to say. So
perfect. Easy enough. All right, so let's talk about business in the 2A space, because this is what brought us here together, basically. So maybe as a foundation for this, you've talked about this a lot in your videos, but the ethos behind a 2A company, essentially, TRex Arms, what is it? What did it come from? All of that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah, so when I started the company, I could pretend like I had this massive vision for what the company should be. And what's funny is when you read about large corporations, like if you read any of the Jim Collins books, like Built to Last, or some of his other books, there are a ton of big companies that started out and the guy just wanted a company, or he wanted a singular product. Like he didn't have a big vision. And sometimes that has to evolve with time. And that's absolutely the story with TRex. So I was invested in holsters. I liked holsters. I made holsters. And then as time went on, as I learned about the industry and I learned about just the Second Amendment in general and how serious it is, and the fact that our country is, and I do believe it's still this day, the only reason we're not as far along as England or Australia with our police state and our socialism and all of our other crap is because of guns. That is the only thing that is holding this thing somewhat together right now, which is allowing our First Amendment right to still be somewhat able to happen, although that's even getting stripped away, like the thing in California this morning, where you're not allowed to do parody anymore. So, but as time went on, our mission for the company evolved. And a couple years ago, we were in these offsites. We hired some executive coaches, and we were talking through things. They were facilitating stuff. And the ethos for the company, why we exist, is to help preserve free states and inspiring citizens to take their responsibility seriously of preserving life and defending liberty. The saying is very long. I actually don't have it fully memorized, which I should, and then just read it off like Manchurian Candidate. But it's a very big, lofty mission and goal, because frankly, what we have as the United States of America, with the Second Amendment and the idea of personal responsibility and potentially resisting a government that goes all tyrannical and nasty, which happens in history, in all times in history. It always happens pretty much. It's something exactly. I think every country should have what we have, and they should enjoy the freedom of having arms and possessing arms. And they should also understand the responsibility that comes with that. So we're not just a company that's focused on just America, although right now we are, for the most part. We do believe our mission goes far beyond that. So as TRex Arms grows as a company, we're not a company we're just trying to build and sell to a private equity firm. This is a legacy company that we want to last for a very long time, specifically as an ideological company. We may not always sell holsters. We've talked about that. What if all of a sudden we can't sell holsters for some reason? We can't sell product. Are we going to evolve into just a think tank and do content and freedom-oriented stuff, or turn into a gun rights activism organization? And the answer is all the above. We could do any of that, provided the mission of inspiring citizens and promoting the idea of personal responsibility in the Second Amendment continues. So that's what's really cool about TRex, is we're not pigeonholed to selling widgets and offering training. No, it's everything. It's all encompassing, and it will change over time. Which I do believe is why we're a successful company. People do understand that, or a lot of people understand that. We're not just a company here to make a quick buck and bail. I'm not just here to do stuff, sell, and get out. This is a legacy company. We will be doing this provided people support us, we'll be doing this for a very long time. This doesn't work without people supporting us. But that is a newer development. Now we're of much more sound mind of what we need to do over in the last couple of years. And we're taking steps to do that more effectively. We have a CEO now. I'm doing my stuff, which is different. He's managing operations, because frankly, I don't like doing that very much. But we're trying to figure out what is the best way to create what we're calling the citizen defense industry, because we believe that is going to be pivotal to this idea. And we actually have a project we're working on right now that I showed a picture of recently, which is kind of drawing a map of what civilian preparedness looks like and what the skills are and the capabilities within that map based on how bad the scenarios are and what might be required, and actually graphing what that looks like, because most people haven't done that. And so they don't know what they need to prepare for, or what they need, they need guidance. So we're actually working on a big project for that right now, just 200 articles, 100 videos, a big UI, software, a lot of software cycles to create a thing that nobody else has done. And from there, hopefully, it will give people it'll give them direction of what they need to do, what they need to think about if they want to be a prepared citizen and they want to take this seriously. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. So one thing I did want to talk about is that you guys talk about it being a legacy company. It was founded basically by you, solo man, right? It moved on to hiring a brother, brother-in-law, and then another brother. So it is a very family started business, basically.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So they came on board. the majority of the people in the company are obviously not family because we have 92 employees plus contractors. I mean, it's 100 if you count 1099s, which is a fun way of boosting the numbers if you want to do that. But there's a lot of family involved, but not in a way people think. Because a lot of people think like, oh, well, just because family's involved, like they're going to do a bunch of like weird stuff. Like, no, there's people at the top highest levels of the company that we're not related to. And last name does not actually like do anything. Like, you've got to be good at the job. You have to understand the mission. You have to be on board with it. And then you're going to get in there and we want you to crush it. Last name has nothing to do with anything. So that's why I try to be careful saying it's a family company, because it's not like, say, the Cathy family with Chick-fil-A, which is more of a family. They've taken over. They've passed it on. They've groomed people to take over. Yeah, that's not TRex Arms.
Gotcha.
We are beyond. We are, in my opinion, bigger than that. Like the mission needs to be bigger than just last name. So
very cool. Yeah, because I think the why to me is almost always the most important thing behind a company. Now, obviously, products are important because that's what you're putting in people's hands, but we see a lot of companies that, like you said, are just here to extract as much money as possible. They don't really have beliefs other than money. When you criticize them and they lose money, they will change their beliefs and all sorts of stuff like that. So, and you guys are very openly Christian. You guys talk about it in your mission statement, like Sixth Commandment, Second Amendment, focused on the civilian, the average person, basically, if you will. Now, when you talk about a civilian defense industry, that is a very interesting term. When I hear of that, I think of like something that's separate from government almost entirely. So what do you mean by that?
So the main thing that has to happen first is that the customer base is respected. So the biggest issue right now with the gun industry is when you go to SHOT Show or you go to one of these big military events, they know who they're selling to. They're selling to this particular unit. Their mission is to take an airfield, kill everyone there, and then start landing an aircraft and then moving on and taking over more stuff. They have a very defined customer, group. They respect them. They get challenge coins. Like, there's a whole culture in the defense contractor world, which the gun industry is not defense contracting. It's very different. The problem with the consumer side is, for the most part, civilian consumers are not respected by big gun companies. SIG, Glock, especially Glock. Most of these big companies that make most of their money on government stuff don't care about civilians. You show up, we're open carrying in some weird holster. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's just a very different interaction that company has with that customer than going to 5th Special Forces Group and talking to them about like weapons they need for like fighting terrorism. Like, there's very clearly different missions going on between both people. I would argue equally noble. Like, you want to have a gun to protect your family on American soil, very important. You want a gun so you could go after terrorists, okay, very noble. It should be considered as equally noble and important. The problem is firearms companies typically don't see it that way. So the first thing that has to happen is the consumer audience is starting to be seen as a respectable clientele by these companies to want to sell product to. And that requires that the consumer market become more professional, tasteful, become more directed in what kind of weapons and equipment they need and for what, which is what leads to some of that conversation about degeneracy and culture and things like that, because it absolutely affects how companies see civilian like sales, 100%. But as soon as consumers are seen as a serious demographic, that is when gun companies shift and get more serious about the kinds of products they offer. And I saw this happen in 2021. After COVID, and we had all the peaceful times, the lovely fiery cities that were amazing.
Mostly peaceful. Yes.
Yeah. I immediately saw at SHOT Show, gun companies took more of an interest in respecting citizens and selling to them, because there was now a direct scenario they could correlate to civilian like ownership of weapons and preparedness. So in 2022, when I went back to SHOT Show, I was like, oh, things are different, because I think they canceled 2021, I think, brought back 2022. And I was like, oh, things are different now. Like, now these gun companies see that there's a market to people who are like preparing for stuff like this. But there is still that piece of how do we make the civilian side a respectable customer base similar to that of the government to law enforcement, counterterrorism units, things like that. And I don't have the answer to that. I'm just giving you my observations as someone who's been to SHOT Show. I talk to these companies, I meet with them, they ask me the same questions. There's some companies now that are asking us, hey, we're trying to define our civilian customer segment. Like, can you all help us with that? And then I'm like, oh, yes, we can. Like, this is cool. So they're trying to figure that out right now. But the customer, it all starts with the customer base. If they're serious and they have money, gun companies will get involved and we'll take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about other companies that sort of like take advantage of that low information entry level shooter. And we were all probably that person at one point, especially if we didn't know that. And I know that that's how I started out. That's how a lot of other people did. And you spend a lot of money on garbage products. There's basically a sea of garbage floating around out there in the civilian space. And I think that it's a very interesting split between people who want the civilian sector to be taken more seriously and the people who are essentially, it's all fun and games and just give me my entertainment. And there is maybe an argument for a place for some of that content, but when it becomes like a lot of the big mainstream content in the 2A space is kind of just slop, right? It's just regurgitated stuff over and over again, or it's literal nonsense, or it's unpaid shilling or directly paid shilling in a lot of cases. It's a very interesting thing to get into.
And that's where, and here's the thing, I want to say this, like, if people want to have fun with guns, and they always will, because guns are fun. They're cool. Like, yes, they are. Like, cool. Have fun with guns. What grinds my gears, and I think this is very reasonable, is the people who go and do all this fun, like degenerate stuff with guns, but then try to say that that's somehow propping up the Second Amendment and trying to combine the two. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, that's not at all what's happening. Just say you're having fun. It's fine. Like, don't try to misconstrue it into some like noble, you're making it more approachable to young people, which, by the way, sexualizing young people starts to, like, I start to question a lot more things, but they brought up that argument. Just separate the two. Go, hey, we're having fun. Like, other people over here are trying to push like firearms activism or pro 2A stuff or militarized training. That's good too. You could make an argument for both, but when people try to put them together, that's when I'm like, no, this is not working. It's going to confuse people. It's going to actually, in my opinion, it's going to make firearms seem more like a privilege and less of a right, because now it's associated with fun and hobby, and that has actually been a problem. There's a very good reason to keep it separate. You want to have fun with guns and shoot frying pans and stuff? Cool. Like, make that content. The more serious stuff also needs to be happening in other areas of the industry. And trying to put the two together is where I see is where I have the most disagreement, and people seem to be honest about it. You're having fun? Just say it. You're having fun. That's okay. That's not a problem. Just don't pretend like you're the one propping up all the activism in the entire firearms industry and the citizen defense industry, doing a bunch of like gay stuff.
It is interesting because people do try and play both sides of that. I want to be taken extremely seriously. I want to be the face of the gun industry, but at the same time, my content is like kind of worthless. And so, not to call it anyone specifically, but we have heard this exact argument from guys. It's basically, I am the entry point to the Second Amendment for a lot of like kids, or for a lot of people that might have been otherwise ambivalent because it's just not interesting to them. And to get somebody, when they view firearms as entertainment, it's very difficult to move them over to, actually they have a much more like real world application, something that you might want to take a little bit more seriously, because their first experience is basically entertainment, which you can, I'm sure there is a percentage of those people who will move from the low information, like basically entertainment consumer only, to a more serious person later on. But that path might never happen, or it might be very, very long, or again, the percentage of people that are making that jump is fewer than they think. So,
and there is a way to do it. So I have, and I will take responsibility for this. I have spoken out against Demo Ranch. Now, not as directly, semi-directly, and just making entertaining content. And people say, well, he's a great entrance into the gun community, and he's great for new people. And I can agree with that. Like, yes, he's been around since before many of us doing his stuff. Do I find it useful for myself? Absolutely not. but lots of people like his content. My only sort of concern with that argument, if he's doing so much to bring people into gun stuff, is unless he like ever has a call to action or tries to lead people along, like that doesn't mean those people are actually falling into the funnel of learning about guns. They may just be up there with the demo ranch, like fun stuff, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But there's a way to weave into your content, like if he does a video about guns and he's like, hey, for those of you that are interested in firearm safety and you want to get into this yourself, maybe check these people out. They don't have to be people that are super like crazy, like us or some other folks, but like offer, yeah, exactly. But like offer the, hey, if you want to do it, you could do this. Otherwise, we're going to get back to our fun, like bulldozer, like stuff or whatever. Right. But often I see these YouTubers who are held in such high regard, never doing a call to action for anything gun rights related, which I don't think they have to do on their channel a lot. I don't expect it because you don't want to alienate your entire audience all of a sudden.
Right.
Going
that was the point I was going to make, is that if you start be a little bit more serious. Well, hey, I have 4 million subs. Now 100,000 people watch my videos. Like, oops, I just went from making X dollars to less dollars. So now they're almost incentivized to maintain that normie audience, which we've seen a lot of gun tubers. As soon as they got popular, as soon as they got a lot of money, their content changed.
Golden chains. But my point is, I believe there is a way to still reach those people with compelling, interesting content while still offering them a clear opportunity to learn more about firearm safety. I mean, there's a lot of great ways you can explain this and get them going down the funnel if they want to. And so but I don't see a lot of that because it is easier to just make the content, make the money, and just have fun and don't get political. Don't say anything that'll piss anyone off. Like, yes, it's very easy to do all that. But it's tough. It's tough stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's money makes everything more complicated. So trying to avoid that as much as possible, especially when you're taking it directly from the industry, which is probably something we can talk about a little later. Yeah. Actually, M26 had a question earlier, and this is something that refers to like preparing individuals. It was about reprinting Army manuals. Only reason he's here.
Only reason here. Yeah, so frankly, that was a project other people wanted to do. I was a little bit less inclined because you can already get the manuals elsewhere. There were some arguments made for why it would be better for us to reprint them and retypeset them and do some things. I was focused on some of the other books we were bringing on, like Adaptive Rifle, which I wrote the foreword to and worked with those guys on. So I'm actually not the best guy to ask about that. I have no problem reprinting manuals, although you can download those PDFs for free anywhere. You do not have to buy them from us. In fact, you probably shouldn't, if you don't have a lot of money, just go download them for free. So I think there's some other things we added into the manuals or slightly modified or updated, I believe. But that was not a project I headed up.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
Isaac's the guy to talk to about that if you want to find out more.
That sounds more like an Isaac guy.
He did it. That was his thing. He did that. I was doing my thing. He's doing his thing. So, I think why this guy's asking is, and I'd be curious actually to hear from you all or from our customer service.
I'm seeing people in the chat talking about it, like reprints were an amazing idea. Got my own. Let Isaac.
Right, well, yeah, and that's where I'd be curious to hear from people. Like, do they see that as a service? Do they see that as kind of weird because we're charging money for a thing you can get for free? Like, I actually don't know. Like, because I don't read a lot of those, man. I mean, I have, but I don't.
Well, what's the PDF that you guys? I don't know the cost. What is downloading something like that from you cost?
Well, I think you can find all those for free online.
Well, right, but if you are doing it and you're updating things, you're making it more readable, more legible for people, what would you charge for that?
I think they're like $10. Oh, print or PDF?
Either.
Oh, I don't know what you'd sell a PDF for. I think they're like $15 for the or more. It's a lot of paper. They're thick.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I like about that is that physical media is very important because as of right this moment, we might have access to all the PDFs and stuff. We should be downloading.
There is that. Offline.
But having like actual books that people can read, I think, is important. And also, what's it called when people try and like make sure that they don't lose information over time? It's a way to safeguard information, basically, by having more offline stores of it, basically. So I think that for some, like, I don't own any, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to own. So I kind of get where people are coming at.
Yeah, and I will say though, that not to get down the rabbit hole, but like the paper that's used to print books nowadays isn't going to last a long time, unlike the old books. And so some of that argument doesn't work as well as people think, but it's a whole nother nerd conversation. So
yeah, that's fine. That was just a little detour. So we've talked about this, but responsibility to the end user. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't really produce anything. I'm basically an assembler. I have my own company. I build things. You sell a lot of product to a lot of people. You have had your products used by people in dire circumstances. So on some level, I would never say that manufacturers are directly responsible for everything that goes wrong with a product, but there is a level of moral, at least, if not legal, but at least moral responsibility we have to people to produce products that aren't going to fail them, especially in the 2A space when they depend on them the most.
Yes. So, yeah, this is something that's very important to me because, and I say this every year, we have an annual dinner with our staff. I give a short speech every year. It's gotten a little shorter because that's just how it should be. But I point out every time that we are not a company turning widgets. We're not a company like, this is a Viore hoodie. I like them a lot. They're, it's actually an interesting company, but they don't seem like insanely woke, which is cool. But if this company sent me a hoodie that I bought with like a problem, my life's not on the line. It's not a big deal. Like it's a hoodie. It's a piece of clothing. It's apparel, whatever. But when you start getting into something serious like transportation, you're trading vehicles and you have seat belts and you've got stuff going on that is a very dangerous activity that people are doing every day, or medical equipment in the healthcare industry, or firearms in regards to like personal defense. I do think there is some responsibility that people morally, sometimes legally, but then the pharmaceutical companies don't have some of those.
Right.
You don't have to worry about some of those, which is kind of wild, a whole other conversation. But there's a moral obligation companies have for taking these kinds of products seriously because people's lives are at stake. And in the gun industry, they fluctuate, right? Like a holster is not as, I'm not going to say it's not as important. The gun having a failure is more likely than the holster. Like the holster is probably going to be okay.
It's a much more piece of equipment,
right?
Yeah.
If the handgun that gets drawn that then explodes in your hand because it's from a certain company that starts with S, or it has something happen, like the firearms company is much more on the hook for an issue that can happen. Now, I still see there being a huge responsibility on us to make a holster that doesn't fall apart like right away when you buy it. It allows you to get to the handgun like every time with practice, or 99.999% of the time with practice, you can get to it just fine. So that we are providing a product that we are promising to do the things of being accessible, efficient, concealable, like all those good things. As long as we're meeting those criteria, you're happy with the product, we take care of you with the lifetime warranty, then like we're good to go. That's we're fulfilling our moral obligation to you as a customer. I'm actually really thankful we don't do firearms because that would just be, that's so serious. Like you actually make guns or body armor for that matter. And I just got back from visiting HASCO and then a energetics lab in Phoenix. That stuff is crazy because that's the stuff that's meant to like stop the bullets so you don't die. And that's the stuff you're selling people. Like I would be stressing about that like crazy if I was the one manufacturing that stuff. Yep. But sadly in this industry, what I've learned is, and I thought going into it naively, everyone's Republican, everyone's conservative, everyone's Christian, everyone's 2A, we'll all be one big happy family. Everyone's here for the right reasons. And I quickly learned, it's money, ego. I used to be a somebody. You have to respect me because I'm a former whatever guy who worked for the government. I can take these people's money because they don't know better, and I'm going to take it because that's what I do. And I was just like, this is horrible. Like it was like 4 years in. I was naive homeschool kid, and I got stabbed in the back a couple times by a bunch of the veteran guys, and I was like, this sucks. Like this industry is dumb. But I saw the good that we were doing, helping people, and I saw the opportunity for, if there's all these grifters and like snakes out there, I want to do this out of spite, to like, because
Right.
they're taking advantage of these people. I want to crush them out of spite, which I saw someone mention like forever ago in the comments, and I kind of agree with. So there is a moral obligation, I believe. It is not legally binding. There's very few industries where you're actually legally bound to do the right thing to people with consumer products, although it does happen. But I believe it's a moral thing where you make the customer right, and it's really not that hard. Like, just do what you say you're going to do. Return people's money when they don't get product. Obviously, make sure they're not trying to scam you. It's actually not hard. Like, it is so blatantly easy to just do the right thing, and people will support you. So whenever I see guys try to get away with like putting scammy night vision tubes in night vision housings and just doing dumb crap, not responding to people for weeks, it's like, the internet exists. Like, you're going to get found out. You're going to be out of business within a year. It just shocks me how much people think they can get away with, and it lasts for a year or two before they're found out. But
100%.
There is a moral obligation. Yes.
Yeah. So legality is an interesting one because that's something we have like no control over, right? But as Christian men, we have to answer to God for what we do, right? So like when we frame stuff like that, there is a very high weight that comes with our actions, right? So, and we talk about different gear not being quite as serious, even if it's just somebody wasting X amount of dollars on a product. And they're also, like you mentioned, like bad tubes in night vision. That's something that like the average viewer, like if they get it, they won't know the difference, right? Yeah. They scrimped and saved to get into night vision because that's what they were told to do. And then, hey, you scammed them by, putting in a half cost tube or whatever it is into their unit. And they're never going to know until somebody else who knows something looks through it and like, bud, you got ripped off on that. Yeah.
So here's a fun one. Now, this is not a ripoff, I don't think, but like, this is how like wild it can get. I have a Wilcox laser rangefinder. It broke. I sent it to Wilcox. They said they could fix it, but then they found out my laser rangefinder was off by 2 meters in all rangings, and it would need a full motherboard fix, and it was going to be very expensive. And I'm probably going to skip it and just ride on there 2 meters off because, like, it's not a big deal.
Close enough.
But at the same time, I'm like, did they sell that knowing it, which I doubt because I did damage the unit? Did the previous owner know it had an issue, which I'm not sure how he would have known, but like nobody would know that. Like, I could have gotten that device back, sold it to someone for 10 grand and not told them the 2 meter thing. And they would never know. Like,
right.
But now that I've said this publicly, I can't do that. And I won't. Yeah, exactly. But that would be the wrong thing to do. But it'd be the wrong thing to do, but it'd be so easy. Like, I could just go sell that for 9 grand because that's what they're worth-ish. Not tell anyone it has a problem, even though I know it's a 2 meter offset thing going on. And there's so many people that would do it. They just take advantage of people. I don't know how they sleep at night, but.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Once you make money your priority, like you'll do anything. You'll do anything to get it. You'll do anything to keep it. And when people, maybe like me or like you, call them out for it, threaten their money supply, essentially, they'll lash out in a variety of different ways. Like, I mean, I've gotten C&Ds and stuff from other companies. That's always fun. But yeah, once you sell your soul, you can't really buy it back. Like, it sets you down a path that is very difficult to come back from. And it's something, unfortunately, that we just see all the time in this industry. Like you said, I think this last SHOT Show 2024 was my first SHOT Show. I've gone to a few industry events, and man, every single one that I go to, just the worse and worse that it gets. Whether it's just the quality of products that are coming out, the type of marketing that you see for different products, or just the empty promises and basically like vaporware that's out there. It's all like, I don't really know if I want to actually go to these events anymore. This really isn't a fun time other than meeting some cool people, right? Yeah. You'll find some cool individuals here and there. So
now the money thing, and that was one I learned early on, is I started getting approached with sponsor deals very fast because I had a big Instagram following. And I already knew, like, I was like, if I take this, then I can't say what I think. And yes, I'll make like $500 a month, but that's kind of lame because I like to say whatever I want. Like, money is, I'm not for sale. Like, I'm going to say whatever I want. Like, I don't care. That's why I can never be in politics because I won't take the money from the APAC dudes. So, or however you pronounce it. So, but I saw people doing it, and I'm actually really thankful that they made the mistake so I could see it happen and see I didn't want it. As soon as they took the money, and they were on the hook for it, they couldn't stop. And they would just get owned like a prostitute. Like it would move through companies. This is back in 2017 era, like where this was rampant. And yeah, we're talking $1,500 a month to use the product and talk about it on Instagram, talk about it on YouTube. And as soon as that $1,500 is gone, well, you got to go replace it. So then you just go like, oh, this AK company, they got an AK. It's great. I'm going to put my name on it and sell it. And I saw this happening. I was like you're shilling you sold your soul, like your reputation for like a couple grand. Like you could have worked
pathetic in some cases, right?
Yeah. It's like you could have worked a job, made that amount of money respectfully, still had the social media following, waited till you had a company you actually liked that you could partner with and be like, no, I like their values. Like I'm working with them. They're compensating me for the time, but I can work hand in hand and actually have a relationship that's more like, I would say, equitable and more like a professional business relationship and not this like whore stuff going on. And so, but I'm thankful for those people that I saw who took that golden carrot over and over. And I was just like, I don't want that. I'm not doing it. And I've never taken sponsor money. I was offered 1.8 grand a month to shoot a rifle exclusively. So 6 figures. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that because then I can't shoot all the guns I want to shoot, which is the content people need to see. I want to say whatever I want. No amount of money is going to buy me. And that would have been me personally. I wouldn't have been like company. That would have been like, no, Lucas Botkin, 8 grand, shoot these guns. And I was like, no, that's easy. No, super easy, just because it's not worth it.
I mean, it takes a very like autistically special person to be able to do that sort of thing. Like most people don't have like the same sort of moral background. And so the money is just, it's a little compromise, right? It's just a little thing. And then it leads to more things and more things. I've talked to people that I really respect in the YouTube reviewer space. And they tell me that they feel bad reviewing certain products because, you know, they have like X relationship with this person and whatnot. Or it's like, well, I receive free product, or I receive X, Y, and Z, or my affiliate account is ridiculous. So it's like really hard to go talk about this new product that's bad because that's going to hurt me later on. And it's kind of disheartening to see for some of that stuff. But like me personally, I canceled all of my affiliate accounts with manufacturers. I didn't even want to have that on as like a possibility of changing my opinions. I no longer accept money, flights, hotels, food, even product from companies. I don't want to be related to these people at all, especially the more people that I get to know in the industry. Like I'll review the products, I'll buy it myself, people send it in, and I'll never touch your money whatsoever. So
and the thing people don't understand is this is what I actually think gun channels should do is if you spend so much time with product as your job, you're going to become an expert in these things. At which point you become a consultant and you charge for your expertise to these companies, helping them release good products that people will like. And then you could charge actual buku money because consultants, holy crap, consultants make bank. Our consultants make an insane amount of money coming out and working with us. And one, it's more respectable because you're actually helping them make a better product, which I tried to do with some companies. And sometimes I feel like they want to hear the criticisms and sometimes they don't. And I'm just doing that for free because we're just working with them. But I think there's a way where both parties can win, but more importantly, the consumers win. They're not being shilled to, they're not being lied to by either the manufacturer or the content creator. They're getting a truly better product, which was the PSA M110 project. Like I worked with PSA to make that M110 because I wanted a budget M110 that was cool and all that. And I shot, I think, 3 different versions of that gun with them. I put up my own money for the ammo. They sent me the uppers and the guns. I sent them lots of feedback of what they should fix. And then now they can't like keep that gun stocked. I don't make a dime off that gun. I just wanted to help them make a good gun and give them feedback that they would take. And I believe they did take at least the majority of the feedback. The gun is way better than it was when it started. And so the consumer wins. We didn't win with that particular deal, but that's okay. I don't need to win on that. I could just help them and work with them and hopefully get a cool M110 rifle in the hands of people that like that sort of thing. And last time I talked to them, they were like, we still can't keep the gun in stock. And I was like, well, that's cool. I mean, they're
I
making
see it
money.
everywhere, man. It looks cool on the gram.
It is
But
cool.
People think that I hate PSA, but I actually, at one point, I had conversations with their QC manager, one of the gentlemen over there, and they had a picture of one of my saber uppers that was like not finished machining, and they had that hanging in their QC department. And like that sort of thing is cool to see, right? Because they're like, this is what happened. We're going to try and not do this again. Like, please don't ever do that again, right? On this stuff. Yeah. As far as consulting goes, even that, like you said earlier, people in the industry have very sensitive feelings. I was offered a position at a place, did a review on their product, and they canceled the offer because they didn't like the review. So I thought that was very funny.
Such weasels. Oh my god.
Yeah, and oof, man, they defended their stuff to me, not only like in that video, but like in emails.
Okay, I have to say. So I listened to the live stream last week. I was in the hotel. We were on our trip. I heard it in the background, and there was a comment that was made, and this doesn't boil my blood, but I need people to understand this. If you ever hear a business owner or anyone in business or in a company, in a corporation, who's involved in making product, and they say, we have never heard of a bad user experience with our product or a product failing, that's some BS. Because I'm telling you right now, every single company has product that fails. They have a failure rate. When Elon Musk was launching all of his rockets, they were exploding. And then they would take reports down of what exploded so they wouldn't do that again. And I remember people would make fun of him for all of his rockets failing explosions and like launch tests. Well, now they have like 66% of the satellites like in like space. So I think Elon did okay. Like, yeah, he had failures, but he like made it work. So whenever I hear companies say that or they can't take criticism, I'm like, no, dudes, you have problems with your product. We've had problems with our holsters, with our offset mounts, with our nylon. I've seen it with every product we've sold. We've even had products that we've bought from, because we retail. We're a weird company.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, retail, and design / OEM with other people. So we do it all, which is weird. We QC other people's product that comes into the building because we don't fully trust their QC when it goes out because of like some weird stuff going on. So there was one brand in particular. We were checking, I think it was every widget that we got from them for like 4 months and keeping a log of like how many were actually dead on arrival. And then we submitted that information back to the vendor and they were like, oh, cool. Thank you. Like we actually need that feedback. Yeah. So you're going to have problems everywhere. Every company has them. I just have to get that out there to people to understand because there is an unrealistic expectation from consumers too, that you should never get a faulty product or a product like products should always be invincible and also as cheap as possible. It doesn't work.
Pick one.
Yeah, that's not how it works. But yes, every company out there has problems. We have our own. And the question is, in the ethical, moral dilemma of every company is what do you do to fix the problem? That is what separates ugly companies from bad companies, from good companies, from great companies. It all comes down to what do you do when the issue happens, when the customer has something that's faulty or a batch of it was faulty or a fit test failed and Haze Code does a recall, which they didn't have to do, but they did anyway. Like that is what separates companies. And that's what I look for in the industry when I see stuff like this morning. I know I'm ranting, but this is very important.
No, go for it, man.
Really right stuff. They make high-end tripods. They sent an email this morning. Weird that I remember this. I think this is why it's very important to me. They put in there that there's an issue with one of their ball heads for their tripod thingies. But they said it's a failure rate of 3 within 1,000. So they had a number that they gave everyone like, hey, this is a problem we found. If you have the problem, here's how you fix it. But they also gave the number. Like they're not trying to hide behind like some like, oh, we don't think the problem is that bad, but if you have it, contact us. Like, no, they gave a number, 3 out of 1,000, which is not horrible. But they gave that, and I love it. No, I know. And I thought it was great. I saw the email and I was like, very cool. And I just clicked out of it. It was like really right stuff. I like them. They're taking responsibility. I probably don't have that problem with that product because I see what the failure rate is. I'm going to trust that that's correct. Could it maybe be wrong or cherry picked? Maybe. But I want to trust it's correct until I have a big issue with their company. and then maybe
well, let's talk
guesser.
about QC stuff, because that is an interesting conversation from a business side. So, like, I build uppers. That's what I do. I assemble them all the exact same way, same time.
Yeah.
And whenever I have an issue, it's not, for me anyways, it's not enough for me to go back and just fix the issue. I need to figure out how the issue happened in the first place. So, like, I'm not doing the volume you guys are doing whatsoever. So, like, as me, I can actually go through and check each individual part. But, like, I had an issue where some handguards there, cross bolts / wedges weren't actually machined properly. So they would tighten up, they would go down to spec. But then 5 months down the road, somebody would be like, hey, your handguard is wobbling. It's like, okay, are they torqued down? It's like, yeah, they haven't shifted because I white paint pen all my stuff. But I wasn't checking that the handguards were actually like not vibrating loose because the wedges weren't machined properly. So now after I assemble them, there's an additional step. I actually take a rubber mallet and I go up and down the handguard on both sides down, and I check to make sure that that thing did not come loose with vibrations. Everything looks like it lines up properly. It torques down properly, but I need to go through and actually figure out if I have a problem, try and catch that before it goes to the customer. Right. And I think that's the extra step. Like, I mean, we can name companies that basically accept a return and send you another one, and then that part that failed just gets thrown into a bin somewhere. They never look it over. They never try and figure out how that happened. As long as their return rate doesn't exceed a certain amount, they don't care. Right. Yep.
And at some point, it does come down to volume, because, and you'll see this with companies like PSA or Arrow or probably others. If a company sells, let's say 100,000 rifles, and they have a failure rate of, I don't know, 0.0 something %. Well, that's potentially hundreds of people showing up on Reddit saying they have problems, which looks bad. Like hundreds of people on Reddit, like, oh, this is bad. Well, if they've sold hundreds of thousands of guns and there's only a few hundred people upset, it actually may not be as big of a problem as people think, because you just don't know the volume. Now, if you're a company that's only made 2,000 rifles and your lead time is 8 months, and there's a forum with 50 people that are upset or 100 people that are upset, well, now the number starts to be more of a problem. And that's something that the consumer, like, we just don't know in most cases. When people are like, you know, LMT's QC is trash now, Arrow sucks because their firing pins break, and this thing over here, and it's like, well, we don't know how many guns these companies are moving. Like, unless you have an RSR account and you refresh every week and you kind of watch things, which I actually do that for a few companies, just to kind of see what the industry is doing. You don't actually know, like how bad failures are for certain companies. But the thing you look for as a consumer is, what does the company say about it? If they don't ever talk about it, they don't do recalls, they don't address upgrades, or even a product video where they're like, hey, this is the new MCX. Like, I'm not actually saying this is an MCX issue, but let's just assume.
Use it as an example.
Yeah, this is the new gen MCX. The old one had this thing and we wanted to improve it, so we have this now. Like, most companies won't even say that. They won't even allude to their past generation being lesser, which I think is, like, again, bull crap. Like, go ahead, say, like, you upgraded for a reason, I hope, unless it's just to cut corners and make more money. Like, I hope you upgraded for a reason. So, like, in our product videos, I reference the old product as much as possible. Like, hey, the old one had this. We took the grommet out because it didn't need it, and that made it cheaper or better, and the new one's this. Like, you should be able to talk about the old product just fine. But so many companies don't want to, because of, again, ethics and money and stuff. So
I think it's really cool, because you guys you obviously probably one of the first fast gunners on Instagram. You probably almost started that trend. Like, there's so many Lucas copycats at this point. Like, you started a whole wave of these guys. But you are a very public facing person. Whereas a lot of these companies, they're run by older people. They're run by a completely different generation. And so the idea of being publicly accountable and, like, owning up to mistakes or things like that, like, they are very averse to this. When we talk about pride and ego in the gun industry, boomers. Like, there's a well, exactly, right. There's a certain type of people. It's like, I worked for 40 years to get to this position. I will not be embarrassed by my new rifle failing for whatever reason, right?
This younger person knowing more than me or something. Yeah.
And which is why I think that why people choose to support people like you, even though, you know, you're quote unquote controversial or whatnot, is because you are publicly available, you're accessible, and you're honest, right? Which is more than we can say than just about every bigger company in the gun industry. It's easy to do it on a small scale. Like, obviously this is what I do. Everything that I do is marketing for my company. right? Basically, I post a video, even if it's on
Yeah.
something unrelated, it's marketing for my company, right? But you actually have a 100-employee company, which makes you a bigger company than, you know, the vast majority of the small ones out there for sure. And so to see that sort of thing is really refreshing. Now,
Yeah.
sorry,
Go
what?
ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to talk about, when it comes to QC, being honest,
Mhm.
fixing your problems, and we see trends a lot of the time. So like we see, like, I remember it wasn't that long ago, we saw like 20 or 30 pictures of broken arrow bolts. Like that was probably a bad batch of material.
Yep.
Funnily enough, the company that I used to work for over in Washington State actually got the contract for those bolts right as I was leaving that company, basically. So it might have been a materials issue with, I'll say them, Scott Industries, because they suck. But that's the supplier for the
Yeah.
That could have been a them issue,
Sure.
not even an issue. So I mean, that is something. You'll see a batch of bad parts come through, and then somebody will say, "Well, they're all bad." Right? I saw 20 pictures in a row in a Reddit forum or something, and they're all bad. Right? And again, you know, they sell a lot of volume, so maybe that's not entirely the case, but
And this is where I've had this conversation with certain companies. Just come out and say it. You have to educate the consumer. Say, hey, 2020, a lot of this happened in 2020. Materials had all sorts of issues. I talked to suppressor companies that had issues. Thankfully, we had some elastic problems with the Ready Rig early on with 2020. But for the most part, our stuff was fine. Our screws for holsters, Kydex, like we were all right. We were good. But there were some of these companies, I said, just be public about it. Say, hey, we got material that was bad. We QC'd it. We missed it. We made the stuff. Here's how we're going to make it right. 99% of the time, you send a newsletter like that, most people won't even take the refund. Like this is how crazy this is. We have now done, I think, around 4 or 5 refund opportunities for people where we've made a mistake and we're offering people a refund for different things. One was we sent a newsletter with a Unitech magnifier combo that we had a typo on our end. People were upset that they didn't get the deal, and we extended it to them. Another one was the Mantis thing. We sold a product that later we decided, in further conversation, realized was maybe not a very effective product. So we offered a refund to everyone who bought those to bring it down to cost. We didn't have to do that, but I wanted to do something for people, and that one made the most sense. Most people don't even take the refund. They say, thank you. We respect the decision. We like it. And most don't even take the refund. Not to say that that's a reason, like, to do the refund as you forecast it, like assume everyone will take it. But if you go first and are vulnerable, 99% of the time, people give you a pass. What people don't give a pass for are companies who are quiet, never say anything. Stuff shows up on Reddit. Stuff breaks. Nobody's accessible. The marketing director never comes out of his hole. The CEO never says anything publicly. And people are just left to assume that Reddit's telling the truth, which, I mean, actually sometimes Reddit is, and often it's not. There are great stories about me on Reddit, by the way. There's some really fun stuff on there.
About Reddit real fast. I got my account banned on Reddit somehow. I posted like once, like 4 years ago. I came back to check something.
You talked about the Haze stuff earlier, so you know.
Yeah, but that was before that.
That's before.
No, I mentioned a company that was really, really popular on Reddit, and I'm pretty sure somebody there had to have gotten my account permabanned somehow. I don't know how that happened, but yeah.
That is fascinating. But yeah, if companies, I've told them every time, whether it's Daniel, Arrow, or any of these people, I'm like, just make a post, talk about it, tell people, like, we had an issue today in a meeting. We've committed to ordering an item for a product that we're working on. I can't say too much because I don't want people to know what it is. But in this meeting today, we realized, well, that item may be wrong and we need to redesign it. And we need to write to that company and say, hey, can we cancel buying the thing? And I just told the guy who's going to email them, like, hey, tell them what we did. Tell them that we're going to redesign it. We made a decision. We're willing to pay for it if we need to, but tell them exactly what happened. Don't try to spin it into like, oh, we need to cancel and not tell them the whole story. No, just tell them we had a meeting and we're going to redesign the widget. We'd love to cancel, but we still want to give them business in the future. Like, we don't want to torpedo the relationship, but just give them all the facts. Like, they'll read it and do with it as they will. And generally speaking, I have not had a problem with oversharing. Typically, it's been good for the business. It's good for therapy too. Definitely overshare in therapy. It's also good. So overshare with your wife. Like, yeah, it's actually good practice.
Well, that's what they're there for, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just like you said, like this should be simple, right? It's like just be honest with your consumer base, be honest with your business partners, right? And everything will, for the most part, go well. I think, like you said, the problems arise when people try to hide or obfuscate. It just makes the problem worse, right? So, I mean, you'll see like the horror stories from name your budget to your company where like nobody responded for months. They got the product back. It was the wrong product. They shipped all sorts of different terrible things. And it just makes it worse, right? And I mean, that's what your like customer service team should be there for, right? They should save you money in the long run by being like honest, helping people get the right products in the first place, helping to resolve issues before it becomes a bigger issue, before you lose future sales. I mean, all that sort of stuff. Like you guys have talked and made videos on all of your customer service stuff, which is really cool to see. Again, you don't see that a lot in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. We tell people to go to other companies to buy stuff. You know how many, like that was, okay. So we're going to the fifth group industry, which we don't do a lot of events, but I want to go there tomorrow because it's been a while since I've been up there. And we were setting up gear in the armory to take the show off. And one of the guys was like, should we take that pouch off? Because that's not ours. And I was like, no, like I want to showcase other people's product used with ours. So I built a Cry JPC with like 3 of our products on it. And it's a Cry. And I've got like Spiritus stuff. And I'm like, no, show it all. Like I have no problem. Like we play well with these other companies, or our products do at least. Like, we're going to show all of that. And for the most part, consumers respect that. Like I respect that. If I go to someone's booth and I only see their product, I'm like, come on. Like you could show some other stuff. Like your stuff is meant to work with other people's product. Like it's okay to show some other people's stuff. You're not going to lose sales from that.
Right.
And there's just little things like that I've picked up on over the years, and they're like pet peeves of mine now.
Right, 100%. Yeah, cross-pollination like is important, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you say you come out with a new pouch, well, guess what? There's a million plate carriers and chest rings floating around out there already. So showing it off with them it's not going to hurt you, right? But I mean, we've talked about this, but that's like pride and all the other stuff that comes with it. You know, you want people to be like SIG. SIG is like a total. You can buy everything from SIG, right?
Yeah,
you
they have everything.
Robots now too. You can buy your suppressors. If you want to buy a rifle, you can go get every single component down the line from SIG. What is that? A total systems integrator or something like that, I think is the correct term for that. But yeah, they sell literally everything that you need. So they only ever show their products. But I mean, they design some of their products to only work with theirs, which is not particularly cool. But
not a huge fan of that.
That's kind of silly. Now we only have about 15 minutes left. Do you want to go through some of these super chats while you're here?
Absolutely. Let's go. Okay.
We have a few
if you want to, I'm down.
Well, I mean, I do. I'm going to go through these one way or the other, sir, but I want to be, your time is much more valuable than my time, sir.
Well, let's see. How do I use this time? No. We can do super chats. Absolutely. I'd love to hear what people are saying. I mean, I've been reading the chat a little bit here.
Yeah. I try and pay attention, but yeah, it's difficult to have a conversation and pay attention and do all the other things at the same time. So yeah, bend over for $9.99. Great name. Lucas, how long have you been a noticer? I started noticing in 2020. 2020 is an interesting year because I think that is not even just about the noticing thing, but I think that it really does wake up a lot of people to, like, you know, just maybe fishy things going on in general. 2020 was an interesting year. 2016 was an interesting year as well. And we kind of see these big events, they tend to cause the most change in public consensus, let's say.
I'm going to throw you a completely different one. So I've been questioning everything now for, I'd say 2 years, but not just like, oh, how I was raised, like stuff like that. There was definitely some of that. But I thought of one thing recently, and that is, you know, growing up, we always saw Russia as the bad guy, right? Modern Warfare 2, they're the bad guy. Red Dawn, they're the bad guy. Like all this Tom Clancy novels, they're always the bad guy. And I actually started thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe all this media that was spoon-fed to me, that was created at the time, like was there something else behind it? And maybe Russia isn't this like arch nemesis villain that we think it is, even culturally, or the people of Russia. But because of all this media we consumed growing up, we just think that. And then the war kicked off with Ukraine and Russia, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
sides and stuff. And it's stuff like that makes me question everything in culture, which also leads to like history revisionist stuff too, where I'm like, maybe these people aren't as bad, or maybe they're just different than some of these history books say. And we need to question some things, because it's easier to write a book where the Russians are the bad guys than the Americans are also the bad guys, and the Russians are also kind of bad too. Both are actually bad, doing some weird, sketchy stuff. And then there's the people in the middle who are going to get caught and be the cannon fodder, or all the civilians. And all war is, I'm not going to say all war is bad, but like maybe that's actually the theme that I should have been raised on instead of some of these other, like movies and stuff.
Are you telling me that the good guys did not, in fact, win every single war ever from all time?
I find that a little sus that the good guys always win. Yeah, just a little bit.
Reads more like a novel. I mean, if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, I mean, go down like the differences in like dictionaries over the last 200 years and the meaning of words. Like you can trace this change in the lexicon back a long ways.
But the funniest thing, before we pull that one up, is whenever people get upset that another country is doing something like, I remember there was an article about Russia can shoot down satellites over their country, and people were like, oh, that's so bad. I'm like, no, that actually seems reasonable. I think we want to shoot down satellites over our country. I think they have a right to do that. Like, why would we get upset when another country can do, like, that actually seems okay that they might want to do that, because we would want to do that too. Just this weird, like no one else is allowed to have stuff that we're allowed to have. And this just very interesting entitlement that Americans have, and people in general, Americans especially, sadly.
America's a weird place, man. We got some special people here on all sides,
Yeah.
All right. Mace fell out the window. Good name for $20. Thank you very much, sir. It says focus strip on the Gun.Deals LaRue Sieta / MRGGS. Was it a misspeak or speculation when saying a 14.5 MRGGA Creedmoor was coming? I know ML does, does what he does when he does, but figured you might know LaRue MRGGA or 13.5 Mars H. So I talked to the guys at LaRue at the last time I was out shooting their rifles at some event. I forget which one that was, but they were talking about their MRGG program to compete with the Geisley 14.5 6.5 Creed, which I also did a video on. I love 14.5 6.5 Creedmoors. Like, that's my jam. For a, quote unquote modern battle rifle. I don't believe that was a misspeak. I believe he said it was coming, but I don't have any specific information on that. I have a contact there. I could ask him, but and I also have no experience with the 13.5 Mars H. Do you have any thoughts on short-barreled 6.5 Creedmoor, Lucas?
I have wanted a 14.5. I know NSW wanted one. I talked to some people about making me a custom one, and they said that 14.5 6.5s have some pressure issues. Nobody has done it yet. And
that's not true. I've done it.
You've done it, and I don't know what standard. But
it was a custom job. No.
Okay.
I know.
So
it had problems that I had to
right,
solve.
And that's where it's like, is it happening in a duty format yet? I don't know.
Guys,
I looked into it because I wanted one.
Yeah.
Like 2 years
cool. I took mine out to 1220. That's the largest, the longest I've shot was with a 14.5 6.5 Creedmoor. Nice. It was a custom weird job, but I think Geisley is the only one that makes one, and it's $7,000.
And I don't think it's ever in stock because Geisley doesn't.
No, of course
anymore.
not. No.
Sad.
John Shepard for $5. Would Lucas be willing to help out CRS Firearms, which is he's still in prison for his auto keycard stuff, and support his legal fees and fund lawsuits challenging the NFA directly? I mean, that's
so. This is something that I have thought a lot about. So I will give the short answer. As I've focused my efforts in the industry, I have primarily focused on culture, because I believe culture is why we have the political mess that we have, which is why I don't spend a lot of time working with GOA or NRA or NAGR or these rights organizations, because they're doing political stuff. And I'm over here doing trying to focus on culture, YouTube stuff, a live stream like this, talking to you all. I did Twitch for a while, because that stuff, in my opinion, is not being done enough. If I need to make the swap to political activism and gun rights stuff and legislation and supporting people in lawsuits, I will make that switch if I believe that is what's best. As of right now, though, I think the culture side is still woefully what's the word? Not considered by people in our sphere, and everyone's focused on the gun rights and the activism that on the politics. Meanwhile, the culture is getting dominated by degenerates and just like horrible people and lefties and stuff. So yes, but no. I'm focusing on culture. I want Isaac to do more of the politics. He has done that. He's done a good job, like doing a lot of stuff. I'm just doing culture stuff right now. But possibly the other thing is like no one person or one company can handle it all. Like it has to be, and we've talked about this, every state doing their own stuff in their own states, and then some stuff at the federal level, but we can't come in and fix like every state's. Like we've had people kind of ask that before, and it's like, no, that's for you to fix. I'm sorry. Like we're handling Tennessee right now, and we've passed some cool bills in Tennessee and helped with those. But that's like all we can do right now is some Tennessee stuff, and then I'm doing culture stuff, and that's about the extent.
I mean, people are always looking for a savior to come in, basically, and do the dirty work for them. And it's like, well, you're already there, bud.
You know what's going on in the state. I don't know every single lawsuit going on, like all throughout the country. Like I don't know.
No, Lucas, I need you to come in and spend 6 figures to help this guy out, and you got to get spun up on this. And I mean, look, TRex Arms could do like if you were going to get into that sort of thing, you could open up your own like wing of the company to do that sort of thing.
We have talked about it. Yeah, let's put it that way.
GB Guns for $20. Thank you, sir. He says, focus trips, QC checklist should be an industry standard. It's impressive. Well, I'm a solo man, so I can do whatever the heck I want to do. Other industries training up, like, here's something I'll say. I applied for an assembler's job one time at Zev in Washington State when they were opening up their new facility there. They were paying $13 an hour for a $1,000 handgun assembler. And I was like, your $1,000 Glock handgun is being assembled by like minimum wage work. I think it was actually minimum wage work at the time. I was like, that's kind of rough. That's kind of rough. So yeah. So I mean, then that's the thing, right? They would have to pay the assemblers, which I think that's one of the most important jobs. Geez, a little bit more money because they want to train them up and make sure they can actually do it to the right spec. So it's easy for me to do it as one man, but man, if I was like PSA and I have like 300 people on an assembly line, that's rough. That's rough to get that to a high standard. Can be done, but rough. Tap rack stovepipe for $4.99 says, huge fan of what you say, Lucas, but many people I know just don't like how you say it. The tone police. Keep up the content, both of you. Yeah. You deal with that a lot.
I agree. I don't like my voice either, but I will still say what I believe.
Yeah.
But I get it. I'm self-aware enough to understand that I sometimes say things and come off in a way that people don't like, and there's not a lot I can do about that. So
yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, tone policing is an interesting thing. I get it why people might not like it when somebody comes off as aggressive or arrogant, but try and look past that and like, what are they actually saying, right?
Or there's that, or weigh their level of experience and knowledge. Because this is a fun one, is seeing cockiness or seeing confidence and confusing it with cockiness. And there's a time and a place for confidence, which I think men need more of nowadays. I mean, confidence is seen as like, oh, it's toxic masculinity. Like, no, if you know a thing and you've done a thing, like, you know, you could shoot a drill a certain way, or you know a certain thing about a gun, or you know a certain thing about history, or like a certain thing, like, be confident about that. Like, it may come off as cocky to people who are maybe more insecure or maybe don't know about the stuff, but we actually need more confidence. And I do get hit with that pretty often. Like, well, you're just really cocky. And it's like, well, I've been doing this for a while now. I've put in a lot of hours. I've spent a lot of personal investment in this. I actually do have an opinion, and I actually do have the stuff to back it up. Now, years ago, I did not say certain things as confidently because I didn't feel like I had enough time in and stuff like that. Or, you know, I don't want to say rite of passage, but just as much time. But now it's like, no, I can actually say this stuff. And if I'm wrong, I will take responsibility and explain why I was wrong. Like, I'm not going to do assassination videos anymore. That's just not the best optics for, again, culture. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I will take responsibility for those 2 videos that I did, or 3, there was 2. But I'm still going to be confident about the things I have done and what I know and what I know I'm capable of doing. And if people think that's cocky, like, you're going to have to get over it at some point and get some confidence of your own.
Yeah.
Like, life's a lot more fun when you can be confident and know stuff.
There's a huge element in culture that is averse to male masculinity. And so, I mean, there have been a million podcasts, millions of hours of content on that. But yeah, one of my favorite terms is mansplaining. It's like, shut up and listen if you don't understand. You know, call it whatever you want. But
Yeah.
usually they don't call you wrong. Drifted Cowboy for $2 says, I think most are here because we support integrity. Well, that is very good to hear. Thank you very much, sir. Nick for $5 says, hope T-Rex keeps doing the podcast, but on Tuesday or Thursday so I can listen to Trip on Wednesday. We got a lot of machine time to fill, bud. Yeah, that's right. Well, you keep chipping away there, sir. There is a question somewhere. I'll get to it, but it's Compulsive Gun Buyer for $2 says, love the convo. Thanks for coming on, Lucas. Yes, it's awesome that Lucas would be willing to come on here and talk all sorts of business and other nonsense on here with all of us. Because, I mean, he runs a real business, you know, not a drop shipping company. Oh, I forgot to even throw this joke in there, but I mean, have you ever thought about charging like $1,000 for a drop shipping course? Just out of, I think you can make some money off
shipping.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, you mean, yeah. No, so my strategy, I prefer giving away the information for free because I care about people and I prefer.
Oh, actually, I forgot to tell everybody. I'm putting this into members only mode after it gets uploaded so that you have to pay me to watch.
Yes.
So now I'm going to make money off of your 2-hour lecture, sir. Andrew asks, M81 GP pouch and Wallaby pouch back when?
I have no idea. I stopped knowing Insight notifications like 3 years ago. We have people for that. I don't
all the time. Yeah.
I wish I could look it up.
A Practical Civilian says, would you help developing and or shooting more PSA products in the future? 308 Jackal and a M1A plus SAS rifle?
That's a question for you.
So here's the thing. Medicine Armory does not like me. Jammin does not like me. The Jackal is his baby. Would I work with a company to help them make a better product? Absolutely, right? Are they going to like what I have to say about it? Absolutely not. So
this is something that we're working on right now that's going to be public too. I'm actually committing us to this by saying this on a live stream. This is one reason I do live streams is I like to say a thing and then the staff knows. There's a couple people at work probably watching this right now, or they'll watch it later. So, and the PSA thing actually spurred this on. So having a written policy for how TRex evaluates a product from another company that's been already made. So it's already on the market, like, you know, the Duty RDS or the Hollow Sun, whatever product name. Then we have another parameter, which is working alongside a company bringing a product to market because the standard is different. When I worked with PSA on the M110 project, it was before it was available to customers. I did not flame them on the first gun they sent me. Obviously, I'm helping them make it better. So
that's you're the tester, right? That's your job. This is not a huge product that's on the market for $1,300.
Exactly. If it's a product that's already available, like the mini ACOG, and we just go grab like a few of them, that's going to be different parameters as far as how often we communicate with the company, how we handle an issue, all that. So we actually have 2 drafts of these strategies, and I want those to be public on our site. Like, this is how we handle solicitations and like product stuff. And we send those to companies. And I think what's going to happen is companies are going to see that, and they're actually going to, they'll see the clear difference between, oh, if we work with TRex initially on the development, we could get feedback and they will actually help us with the product, versus if they get the product after we've already made it, they may flame us if the product's really bad. And it will incentivize, I'm hoping, companies to work with people before selling it to you guys, because normally you guys are the guinea pigs, which is horrible. Yep. And they'll actually work with making the product better. And I'm hoping that's how the industry evolves. But I don't know. We'll see. But that's how I hope that we can work with more companies, is ahead of time, which is why we have other shooters now. It's not just me anymore. So we have more people doing testing like Brandon, but it does get confusing when it's like, are we testing a product that hasn't come out yet? Are we testing a product that's already out? Yeah, the standard's a little different, and how the company reacts to what is happening. So I would love to see more people like Focus working with companies to make consumer products better. I would love to see that. That's what should happen. The reality is most companies don't want other opinions. Their engineers think they're the greatest thing ever. They don't understand the consumer. They have quotas they need to hit. They got margin they need to hit. It's a business. They got to make money. And that's just how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that I really take ire to is the beta testing on the public. Right. That's my thing. Because if I have a bad one or something that's like machined like way out of spec, let's say, there's probably a bunch more floating around out there that are like that. It's very, I shouldn't say it's very rare, but from what I've heard and other machinists that I've talked to, if something is like that far out of spec, it gradually got that way.
Yeah.
So there could be a bunch of them out there like that. So again, that's different stuff. But Mace fell out the window again for $5. Thank you, sir. Says, thanks for the answer. If you can get a yes/no out of Alu, that's great. If not, it's understandable. Either way, I appreciate you asking. I actually found them. I have both of their contact cards. I'm covering their information, but I have both of their contact cards on my desk. So yes, I can reach out to them and ask them. And Nicholas Bowen, last one for $1.99 says, advice for young men looking to start a business. Man, that's another 2-hour podcast, sir.
I'll just have to come on again.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big one. But you should. I will say, okay, this is what I will say. The economy sucks right now. Buying houses obviously sucks right now, although there's some stuff going on with interest rates right now, I guess.
It just dropped, yeah.
I was texting my wife about that, like, hey, tell me what this means, because she does real estate stuff. And but here's what I will say. Even during the Great Depression and economic troubles that have happened, there are opportunities to start businesses and be successful. Like there's always a way to provide a service. That's all you're doing that people derive value from and give you money. So I was kind of actually flip-flopping back and forth on this because I'm working on my next startup right now. And I was kind of thinking like, oh, the economy kind of sucks right now. Do I want to wait until after the election to do? And then I was just like, no, I'm being kind of a pussy right now, like thinking that way. Like if it's a good product and I believe in it and it's going to be successful and it's something that people need, then it's going to work out and it's going to be fine. As long as I make some good decisions and I don't do anything too stupid. So if you are someone who's unsure about the economy, just keep thinking about the business. And I'm not going to say don't worry about the economy, but don't let that hold you back from creating a thing that you really believe people need and will compensate you for. Just get out there, be somebody and do it. Even if the economy's crap, just you may have to be a little smarter in how you do it, how you make your money work, but you can still be successful during economic troubles.
Yeah, sometimes a bad economy leads to openings in the market, right? Because if you can produce an alternative to something that's expensive that people still need, well, now you're filling a hole in the market that didn't exist when the economy was good. So sometimes a bad economy is actually the best time for you in your specific business, right?
Yep.
But finding that product is the difficult part.
Yes.
So, Lucas, do you have any closing thoughts before we get out of here, sir?
No, I appreciate you having me on. I love to be able to come on and talk about some of this stuff. Again, my mission is to hopefully inspire people to take their responsibility seriously with training and guns like this, but also, I'm not going to say more importantly, but I'm also just very interested and invested in the business side and the ethics side of taking care of customers, because I know that some of you guys watching this have your own companies or you want to start your own companies. And I hope that many of you will take great care in taking care of the next generation of customers, everyone else who's here in this chat, me when I'm a customer and I buy from you, because I buy from a lot of companies. And so I want to see this industry be strong and how customers are taken care of. And that does require high moral backbone. And the great thing about moral backbone is, one, you sleep better at night. And two, it's also very financially successful because we're in an industry where people are still, I don't say governed by conviction, but conviction matters a lot to people. They're mostly conservative. They have Christian values, whether they're Christian or not, like just from past generations, and they do respect integrity, like the guy said earlier. So if you have morals and you're strong about them and you have conviction, you will do just fine in this industry, unless you're a turd, and then I'm coming after you. So,
right.
And I want to put you out of business if you're a turd. So that's what I want to do. Out of spite, I will do that for the community. I will try.
Well, fantastic. And I can say, as far as like motivation and inspiration, you have done that, at least with me, because I was awesome. Definitely influenced earlier on in my my journey to where I am now. So for me personally, thank you very much. And I appreciate your contributions to this space. But something great to end it on. Tunnel Lord 1337 says, when did rebuking wickedness become a bad thing? And I have to say, it never did, sir.